no-brainer. But just yesterday, somebody wrote me and said, it sounds really cool what you're doing, but I don't make any money selling my books, and I don't do any marketing, and if you're curious, you can go see what my book is. So I go click on his link. Yeah, it's kind of strange. It was a book about how to be a good audio programmer for movies, for people who make movies. So I wrote him back and I said, hey, Dan, how many people are in your profession? How many people would actually read this book? And he wrote me back and he said, I don't actually know. I never counted. And I'm like thinking to myself, what? You actually put out a book? Yeah, this publisher put out a book without knowing who your audience was? Yeah, I was very surprised. So you need to know your audience. Now let's break it down. In that guy's case, he knew his audience, but he hadn't really defined them well. So think about it in terms of things like their age. How old are they? How old were the audio engineers for film? There's probably a nice little age range. You also want to know where they live. What location are they in? Are they city people? Are they country people? And this can have a bearing on accessibility to books. It can have a bearing on their mindset. If this guy is writing his book to these audio engineers, they're probably going to be techie and really like details and things like that. In my book, The 12 Stages of the Writer's Adventure, the audience are going to be beginning writers. So that's another quality you need to know. Attitude. Also, you want to know education. So why would education be important? Knowing the education of your audience be important. So you need to know what their reading level is, what their comprehension level is, maybe also all the things they've already read. Someone I know, for example, my husband, here in the audience, he's self-taught in physics. And I know because I live with him, I know what he's read, and I also know all the different kinds of resources that he's used to educate himself. So if someone wanted to reach other self-taught people who love physics, they would need to know what kind of education they've had and be able to speak to them. Versus, if you're talking to PhDs versus talking to someone who doesn't have a college education. It helps to know that, because you can speak to them. So we have age, where they live, mindset, attitude, education. Another important thing to know, especially when we sell books, is what do they read? What do they read? Do they read magazines? Do they read only online? What kind of books do they read? What are the 5 other books that they most recently read? One of my friends has a book on journaling coming out soon, and she was able to tell her publisher the 5 most recent books that her target audience had read because she'd done workshops with them and she had surveyed them. And that helped her sell her book. So it can help you sell your book to a publisher, but also it's going to help you understand the conversation that your readers are in. So, for example, you're a thriller suspense writer, and you need to know what else is out there. And probably your audience has also read those thriller and suspense authors. If you're writing on how-to tech stuff, you also need to know what everybody else is reading, right? And social media, social media topics. You need to know all the resources they're reading so you can be a part of that conversation when you interact. And it's kind of like you are understanding the world of your reader. This is all to help you. Knowing your audience, number one, is to help you understand your reader's mind, what's in their mind, and also what's in their life. So these two can be broken up in demographics and psychographics, generally. So demographics is anything that you can measure, anything that has a number attached to it. So you can even go as deep as buying habits. And then there's going to be things that aren't quantifiable. Mindset, attitude. Another question right here. For things like mindset and attitude, you need to ask questions of your audience. You need to find out what do they believe? What's important to them? Values. What do they value? I read a lot of mysteries and thrillers with my husband. And I noticed that in these stories, what's valuable is justice, is family, is righting wrongs. These are important to the readers of these, of thrillers and mysteries and suspense, and not just to the, and of course to the writer, but very much to the reader. That's why we read these books. All right. I guess an important point that goes even before point one, which is know what it is that you're writing. So this is actually part of knowing your audience. You need to know your genre, because you need to make sure your audience reads it. You need to find what your whole job here is. We're looking for the audience that reads what you're writing. So when I say know your genre, I mean, is it fiction? And if so, what kind of fiction? We all need to know if it's literary or romance, mystery, etc. If it's nonfiction, you need to know, is it how-to? Is it inspirational, motivational? Is it a memoir? Is it a history? One of my clients is writing a historical account of her mother's life. So that's actually historical fiction. She's also connecting it to her memoir. So it's a very interesting kind of hybrid that we're probably going to put under the umbrella of fiction. In nonfiction, so there's a lot more categories. So just imagine there you are, you're in a bookstore, okay? And you're imagining where your book could be in the bookstore. And the bookstores are divided in categories. Why? So we can find our books, right? Otherwise, you know, it's going to be a big... Today I walked into this new used bookstore in my neighborhood. There were no categories on the wall. Maybe the categories were sort of like big books, little books, pretty books. I don't know. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting way to categorize. How am I going to find what I want in here? It's confusing. So you need to know, what is your genre? What is your category? How is your audience going to be finding your book? So you got to think like them. And this can be challenging for some writers. Some writers get stuck in what they would call it, but you need to call it what your audience would call it. So think about that, right? And we realize, you know, there's a difference between a thriller and a suspense, for example. So make that distinction. Okay, so knowing your audience, part of knowing your audience is knowing your genre. So that's step one. And before we even go online and find our audience, we need to know who they are. And know what it is that they might be looking for. All right, so we're going to move on to step two, unless you guys have any questions about step one.
Okay. I have a comment that
yeah.
So, as you were talking here, I just went on Facebook and I created an ad. Because I'm curious, like, how do you find this information? And so I went on Facebook and I started typing in, you know, romance, mystery, etc. And when you go there to create an ad, Facebook will tell you like how many people have expressed that interest.
Wow.
And
okay.
Yeah. So my mind is being blown right now as you're talking about
really?
Facebook. So because
Facebook allows you to search
yes.
for your audience in a very targeted way. Mm-hmm. Great. Another excellent plug on why you need to know these things.